we used to host Passover Seders here at our house in Shreveport. And some of these folks came to Passover Seder. And Passover is all about freedom, freeing the slaves from Pharaoh in Egypt. And one time Sam said to my dad, "Bernie, you're our Moses." And it still affects me today, the look on Dad's face when Sam said that to him.
This is Chocolate and Coffee Break, a compassionate proposition, a space to share stories, bridge divides, and spark meaningful connections. So grab your chocolate, pour your cuppa, and let's break down barriers, one conversation at a time. And now, here's your host, Andrea Pudding.
Welcome to the show today. We're looking forward to another deep and wonderful conversation. Today, my guest is Jeff Klein. He's a speaker and coach who helps people use their voices to make a difference. But today, he's here to share the story of his father and the man known as the Moses of Shreveport. Did I pronounce that right? Probably not. But we're going to have an interesting conversation, and we hope that you're going to join us and be willing to be open and listen to the conversation that matters. So grab your cuppa and your chocolate and join us at the table. So welcome, Jeff.
Hi, Andrea. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming along. I'm really looking forward to hearing this story today. But I want to start with a conversation starter from my little conversation starter pack. So what is one thing from your religion or culture that you want to share with the world?
Well, we're here to help make the world a better place.
That is a really good thing to have as a basis of your culture, of your religion.
Heal the world. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I like it. I like it very much. And I've lost my screen. There we go. We're back. And so, Jeff, I'd love to hear about the story of your father, that you are so proud of your father, obviously. And so please share with us what it is that you want to want the world to know.
So my dad, blessed memory, Bernie Klein, was the youngest of 7 kids, 6 of whom made it to adulthood. He was born in 1930 during the Depression and had a lot of traits from that, growing up in that time here in the U.S. He was born in a place called McKeesport, Pennsylvania, right outside of Pittsburgh. And his father, Meyer Klein, was a barber who came to the U.S. somewhere between the ages of 14 and 17. We don't know exactly because he lied about his age, because you had to be 16 to travel alone. And we don't know exactly how old he was to get here, but he lied about his age because he came alone on a steamship into the port of New York, into Ellis Island, with all those hundreds of thousands of people from Europe, and started a new life here. He had one relative in McKeesport, and he proceeded to bring his 4 brothers and 2 other sisters to America. And so, freedom was something that was ingrained in Dad from the very beginning. Zadie, our grandfather, that's what we called Meyer, had 3 wives during his life. Dad's mom was his second wife. She died because she had Dad. She wasn't supposed to have any more children, and she died within a few months of him being born. So he never really knew his mom, and his dad wasn't prepared to raise small children. So he and his younger siblings went to an orphanage when they were small. And so Dad grew up in orphanages and yeshivas, Jewish boarding schools, and then eventually grew up with one of his aunts in high school. But Dad became a social worker, Jewish professional, and worked for organizations like B'nai B'rith Youth Organization and Jewish Federation and Jewish Community Centers. And that's that there's two kinds of Jewish professionals. There's the one who gets a job in a city and stays there for 35 years. And there's the kind who moves around a lot because for one reason or another, he doesn't get his contract renewed and stays somewhere 1, 2, 4 years, and then moves on to another city. And we moved to Dallas, Texas from Chicago, Illinois, where my parents met and I was born. And Dad worked for the B'nai B'rith Youth Organization, which still is an organization where Jewish youth, high schoolers, learn about culture and not so much the religious part of Judaism, but the cultural part and about Israel and why we're a people, and socialize together. It is a non-denominational, meaning it doesn't matter what level of observance you are as a Jew. B'nai B'rith welcomes everybody. And Dad went from being an assistant director of the region in Chicago to the director of District 7, which was Texas, and then 7 states east, all the way to the Florida Panhandle. And so he worked with thousands of kids as I was growing up until the age of 10, when we moved to Schenectady, New York, for him to work at the Jewish Community Center. And then Wayne, New Jersey, at the YMYW, Young Men's, Young Women's Hebrew Association, which is the same thing as the Jewish Community Center in New Jersey, New York. And then Shreveport, Louisiana, where we had used to visit every summer from Dallas at Centenary College, where they had a 2 to 4 weeks of leadership programs for the teenagers in the BBYO when I was a kid, and Dad ran the program there. So he taught leadership to hundreds of kids in the late 60s, early 70s. And one of the programs I still remember from when I was a little kid was when they called up some folks in the Soviet Union, talking to them on the phone. These folks were called Refuseniks. They were Jews who had applied to get out of the Soviet Union. And that made them outcasts once they applied to get out, because people didn't leave the Soviet Union easily. You couldn't just move away. You couldn't emigrate. It was a closed culture, exemplified by the wall in Berlin, the Eastern Bloc. And the Soviet Union had 12, I think, now I've lost the number. They had 15 Soviet Socialist Republics. Remember, it was the USSR, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. And so if you lived in Ukraine, your papers, because everybody had papers, they must see your papers. Everybody had papers. If you lived in Ukraine, your papers said that you were Ukrainian. If you lived in Kazakhstan, your paper said you were Kazakh. If you lived in Irkutsk, your paper said you were Irkutsk, unless you were Jewish. No matter where you lived in those 15 republics, if you were Jewish, your paper said Jew. And that did not matter where you were born, your paper said Yevra, Jewish. And Jews were considered separate in the Soviet Union, not treated well at all, not allowed to observe their religion. Religion was completely discouraged under the Soviet communist system. But Jews managed to maintain some level of observance. There were synagogues. A lot of them were hidden, but they did manage to maintain some level of observance. And there was a movement throughout the world to help some of them get out, help some of them leave legally, not having to, escape difficult, more illegally, I guess is the way to put it. But what would happen was that they actually formed the part. It was part of treaties, even nuclear treaties. The SALT Treaty, which was a nuclear weapons treaty, had addendum in there stating how many Jews the Soviets had to let go because of international pressure. Now, that meant the Western world, mainly America, paid them cash to ensure that they would let some Jews leave. They paid the Soviet Union lots of money to get some of these Jews out and give these folks freedom. And in the 60s, very few Jews got out of the Soviet Union. I'm talking about less than 10,000. When we got into the 70s, about 250,000, 200,000 or so got out. And one of the things that the Jewish fundraising groups did was sponsor families of these Refuseniks, these Soviet Jews, and help them resettle in America. And
let's talk more after this. We have a quick chocolate break and listen to our sponsors. We can come back and hear more about that story. Looking forward to it.
Excellent.
When I hit perimenopause, all I heard was doom and decline until I took a sacred pause and I went searching for women who are radiant after menopause, like Dr. Christiane Northrup, Dr. Vandana Shiva, and the late Dr. Gladys McGarry, still shining at 103. In this book, I share their stories and wisdom and the magic that menopause truly holds. 7 Wonders of Menopause is a sacred reminder. You're not ending, you're returning. Available at independent bookshops in Australia and Amazon around the world.
Did you know that only 30% of speakers are women and that only 13% of panels feature women? In order to change that, there is now a directory at womenspeakers.com.au where you can go and search for a speaker. We also have groups on Facebook and LinkedIn under the name Australian Women Speakers, where you can just go and post about your event and women will respond.
So back with Jeff, I'd like to hear about how your father, what did he do in this situation when he found that there was so many people desperate in the Soviet Union?
So he had always wanted to do something for this movement. And when we moved to Shreveport, he had the idea of having the Jews in Shreveport, Louisiana, adopt some of these Refuseniks. And he talked to the people there. And Shreveport was a town with some people with money, so they knew that they could afford to fundraise and do this effort. And they went to the organization HIAS, which is the resettlement organization. And he loved to tell the story about the look on the face of this representative when he met with them. And they said, "Oh, are you going to bring in a family of 4 or a family of 5? How many people are you talking about?" Dad looked this person in the eye and said, "We're bringing 30. 30.
Good on him.
And he loved to tell that story. And that's what they did. They brought 30 people to freedom. And the first was a young couple, 20-something engineers, Alex and Elizabeth. The second was a family of 3, Sam and Val and their daughter, Natasha. They live in Dallas now. We still are friendly with them. Then there was a family of 5, and Alex, the teenager who was our age at the time, his English teacher wasn't the best English teacher. She taught him that the word for fork also meant to have sexual relations. And we told him that was a mistake before he got to high school and made that mistake in front of other people. We helped correct that little error. And then then they brought Val's sister and husband and their son, and then they had a daughter in America. Their son now has a child that was born here in Dallas. So this is we used to host Passover Seders here at our house in Shreveport, and some of these folks came to Passover Seder, and Passover is all about freedom. Freeing the slaves from Pharaoh in Egypt. And one time Sam said to my dad, "Bernie, you're our Moses. And it still affects me today, the look on Dad's face when Sam said that to him.
Yeah.
And we have a Facebook group now. We're trying to find all the folks we can to see how many people have, how many folks have had kids and grandkids, and how many people Dad's responsible for, because he didn't do it alone. He had to have help. He had a lot of help from the people in Shreveport. And that community has shrunk a little bit. There's not as many Jewish folks there now as there were back in the late 70s, early 80s. But they did bring 30 people from the Soviet Union, who then became, who knows how many people, how many Americans are now here because of those folks. And it was Dad's idea. Dad was the driving force. And one person can definitely change the world.
They can. And that's a really beautiful legacy for you, not just knowing that your father has done something amazing, but also that lesson that one person can make an incredible difference, and that ripples out into the world. So I know that's an important message that I'm constantly sharing, and I think you're sharing that same message. So we're really on that same page there.
And and as a speaker coach, I get to help people figure out what their big idea is and tell the world about that.
Yes, and that's an incredible, powerful thing to be doing in the world. So there is another avenue that I wanted to go down a little bit from that, is that these people have came from the Soviet Union because of the anti-Semitism. But at the moment, there seems to be this rise. Well, there is a rise in anti-Semitism. Yes. And I'm sure that this is deeply hitting you, because I've spoken to some Jewish people and finding it's a really difficult time. Would you like to just speak a little to what's going on within the community for the Jewish people?
Sure. Well, I'm wearing a dog tag which represents the people who are still hostages underneath Gaza somewhere in those tunnels, are 50-something people from Israel, and they're not all Jewish. Some of them are Muslim, Christian, Druze. The people that were taken hostage were also from Thailand. There were a few people from Thailand that were working in Israel. Some were just visiting. There were tourists that were kidnapped on October 7th, 2023. You know, calling for somebody to not be a hostage anymore is not political in any way.
No.
And unfortunately, nowadays, people try to make things political that aren't. They're just not. Saying bring the hostages home and wearing a yellow ribbon for hostage release is not political in any way. And anybody who tries to make it political is doing a disservice to those people who are stuck in those tunnels. And hate is not political. and all anti-Semitism is hate. It's just another form of hate. And it's thousands of years old form of hate. It's got, like anything else, there are roots for there's an explanation for it. It's silly explanations, but I've studied this. I know why anti-Semitism exists. And
why does it exist, Jeff?
Well, it's silly, but the reasons that it exists is because when somebody moves to your town and they look different, they dress different, they speak a different language, you bring them a cake or a paste, that you bring them a delicious treat to eat, and their religion doesn't allow them to eat it. So you're insulted. So now that's somebody you decide you don't like because they wouldn't accept your hospitality and eat your whatever it is you offered them because it didn't meet their, they didn't know if it met their religious needs. So they couldn't just eat whatever you served them. All of a sudden now they're somebody you don't like because you don't understand their culture. So the natural human reaction is not curiosity, it's hate.
Yeah, it's not good, is it? So that's really what we're trying to solve with chocolate and coffee breaks is that you sit down and have this conversation. And for some people, A piece of chocolate may not be suitable. A coffee may not be suitable. I don't care what you eat and drink. Just sit down with something to eat and drink.
Yeah, and
enjoy the conversation. Listen to somebody.
And the stereotype about money is because in the Middle Ages, Jews weren't allowed to own land. We weren't allowed to have a lot of the different trade professions. We weren't allowed to join the unions that taught apprenticeships of a lot of those trades. So we were merchants, and we traveled and traded goods. So we had liquid assets. We had money, cash, because of those. We were merchants. And so the nobles would borrow money from the Jews because the Bible said you couldn't borrow money from a fellow Christian, or at least you couldn't charge interest. You couldn't charge interest to a fellow Christian, but you could pay interest. I don't remember which way it. The Bible says you can't do one or the other. I don't remember which it is, but they would charge interest to a Jew would charge interest to a Christian per se. But then, and what would happen? This is awful stuff, folks. But so if you're, when the local noble would decide he didn't want to pay the loan back, he would start a rumor, or he would find a dead body and throw it in the Jewish quarter in town, and he'd start a riot, and they'd burn down part of the Jewish part of town, and he would never have to pay his debt back.
Oh, goodness. Well, let's have a hold on that and just grab a cuppa and have a quick break while people can like and subscribe to the show, and as we listen to the sponsors.
Hello, I'm Annie Burke, Cosmic Heart Intuitive. I'm the animal-human relationship enricher. I help animal parents connect with their animals, living or in spirit, through telepathic conversations. And you too can learn how to connect with your animal telepathically with my mentorship program. It's just amazing what you can learn from your animals about their past lives, their current life, and their future lives. It will change your life. It will change their life.
You've ticked the boxes: career, commitments, calendar that's more packed than your pantry, but something's still missing. In Compassionate Purpose, Andrea Putting invites you to stop chasing busy and start living with intention. This book is about real fulfillment through small acts of compassion, purpose-driven service, and meaning that last. No pressure, no perfection, just purpose with heart. Compassionate Purpose, Discovering a Life of Fulfillment. Search for Andrea Putting on Amazon. So, Jeff, we're having this deep conversation about anti-Semitism. How do we think we can work with this? I mean, to me, I'm seeing a lot of things happening in Australia, and my logical mind goes, I can't understand why people think like this, why people act like this. And so how can we do something about it?
So I think one of the things we need to do is just, first of all, look at the roots. We've learned that the roots of anti-Semitism come from lies, right? That people believed or created, and that caused them to hate people they didn't know because they didn't understand them. One of the big problems nowadays is still about lies that people are believing. So if a declared terrorist organization tells you something, declares something is happening or is being done, on what basis do you believe those people? I mean, they're not a trustworthy people and this isn't political either. And this isn't racial or ethnic at all. This isn't about a group of people. This is about a specific organization whose charter says we want to kill Jews. Not Israel, not kill Israel, not kill Israelis, kill Jews. That's what their charter says. On what do you base believing anything they say, let alone headlines that the news media has chosen to just believe what they say without fact checking it? Now, a president of a country says something, or a prime minister of a country says something, and they challenge it and say it's not, we need to fact check you. But a terrorist organization says something, and they print it without fact checking.
Yeah.
Don't believe what you hear just because it's a headline. Do your own research.
Yeah. And that is a big thing, that because there is always two sides to a story, and what the truth is may be somewhere in the middle of, and you need to, if you can see both sides of the story, and where you really end up is with the humanity of the situation.
Yeah. Well,
that we need to be considered the.
Unfortunately, so much of what's going on with the Middle East and with Israel, people are believing the base story is a lie, frankly.
Yeah.
What happened in 1948, when the UN, said, here's 2 new countries. I mean, they were doing new countries all over the world. They were doing new countries in Africa. They created Kashmir, a new country between India and Pakistan. Here's a new country, or 2 new countries in 1948. And if you listen to one side of this conflict, there was only 1 new country, and they threw the other people out of that new country. But the fact is, and if you go to any encyclopedia website that's a reputable encyclopedia, Britannica, Merriam's, whatever, go to a reputable website and look at the encyclopedia and read the history. Don't believe me. Read it for yourself.
Yeah.
There were two states were set up. A bunch of these countries around the area said, "Come on, come join us. We'll build an army. We'll drive the Jews into the sea. You can have all the land." And that now is taken as the story that's told is the Jews drove them away and stole their land. Nothing about them having a nation that was larger than the Jewish part that the UN set up. But the fact is that Transjordan, this new nation, was designated for them. Here's you a country. All you got to do is build it. It's there. Everything's, here's the borders. Here's the country. Half of Jerusalem is yours. And you just got to, start building a country. And instead they decided to build an army. And then they lost the war.
Yeah.
And Jordan took their country, and Egypt took their country. Egypt took Gaza. Jordan took the West, what's called the West Bank now. And and the other part that is, again, if people would just check the facts, this slogan of Free Palestine, I would like you to tell me what's occupied, because Israel left Gaza in 2005. And in the 1990s, the Oslo Accords designated the 2 areas of the West Bank for the Palestinian Authority to govern, and one for the Israelis. There's areas A, B, and C. A and B are Palestinian territory. C is Israeli.
Yeah.
And so nobody's occupying disputed lands unless you disagree with the accords that the Palestinian Authority signed. Which, sure, there's people that probably do that. But the Palestinian Authority governs the Palestinians there. The Israelis govern the Israelis. And Hamas was elected to govern Gaza. So Israel's not occupying any Palestinians.
Yeah. Well, there's certainly a lot in there, and we could spend all day talking about it.
Yes.
But what I've found is so important right now is this listening to people. Like I said, I've spoken to Jewish people. I've just been open and open in my heart to listen to them, to hear where they are at the moment, because they are really struggling with this anti-Semitism. And why should children be afraid to go to school? I heard a little girl in the street where she was with her family. They were Orthodox Jews, and she was playing with probably her cousins and said, anti-Semitism is bad. And I thought, why should a child of 8 years old know what that is?
Well, and
here's
so, something. Yeah, I'm sorry. Here's something that's really.
We've run out of time, Jeff.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. We've got to keep on going, and I really wanted to talk more with you about it.
don't blame somebody who lives in Australia for something that's happening in the Middle East.
Exactly.
It has nothing to do with the country in the Middle East, except that they consider it their homeland.
Yeah. So grab yourself a chocolate and coffee. Invite someone who is different to you to share in a chocolate and coffee, and subscribe, like, and comment. And always let love be the loudest voice